guys, welcome to the NWO show, your source for all things New World. For those new to the show, we have a Discord server that hosts the largest public database of in-game screenshots, videos, and concept art from the game, including stuff that you can no longer get anymore from AGS, which includes a couple of videos from the original concept work of the game back in 2016. A link is going to be provided in the Twitch chat, as well as in our in the show as we do syndicate this to YouTube shortly after. I'm Commander A's. I'm a former semi-professional FPS gamer with a background in data analytics and political science. I'm joined live over the net by my co-host McLeod. McLeod, go ahead and tell them about yourself.
I am a kind of I've been gaming for like goddamn like fucking almost decades, right? I mean, I'm just a dude, man. I'm just A's picked me up off the street and just went and just put me in front of a camera and was like, I need someone else here to basically fire off stuff against, and that's me.
It helps that I just found him randomly on the shattered mountain there.
I just happened to be there.
But actually, McLeod and I met playing EVE Online. So the two of us have a pretty long history when it comes to MMOs, and we're pretty happy with what we've seen. There's a whole bunch of stuff publicly out there about the game, and both of us have been highly fortunate with events recently, since right about when our last show was. We got highly fortunate with certain things, and then of course everything went to shit. So our last show being just before major restrictions from COVID-19 hit, and I pretty much had to go to work for 90+ hour weeks until last week, where I decided to take about a 5-day vacation because you can only work that much time.
Because in your line of work, you fucking earned it, man.
Yeah. For those that don't know, I deal with federal level emergency management. So,
there might have been one recently.
Yeah, it might have been just a touch busy. Just a couple of things going on. Maybe, the most disaster declarations in the history of the U.S., plus, simultaneous declarations. So anyways, aside from that, we got all kinds of other fun stuff to talk about that is not the craziness that is the world, but the craziness that is New World.
Ooh, look, the New World.
That segue right there. I don't think I could repeat that if I wanted to. So we have had all kinds of different articles come out since our last show.
February.
Because our last show, reminding people that we haven't actually been on the air since February.
Since a while,
so it's been a while. I think I did a short clip right at the start of the alpha saying, hey, the alpha's live, like, here's the thing. And then we haven't done anything since because, it's kind of one of those...
We've got a kind of lot to cover.
Yeah, we got crazy amounts to cover.
But we can smash it out in a single fucking show, which is going to be good.
Mm-hmm. So, with that, we are going to dive into that, and we're going to change our camera setup to this. So, way back when, they started announcing factions. And a lot of these mechanics kind of play off of each other, so I think it's important that we actually go back at least this far to start explaining why the newer stuff that they're releasing makes more sense. Because a lot of people forget. A lot of people forget what came out before, and they're like, I don't see how that works, and not everyone's in the alpha, so they can't really see how these systems kind of mesh together. So you got 3 factions. Those 3 factions, you get hard locked into them. They're pretty awesome. They have custom sets of stuff and rewards for working for your factions. There's a whole lot here. And it's important. Each kind of each faction has their own ideology, um, their own kind of feel, um, and of course, that's who you are. That's your thing at that point. That's your group that you're going to try and make succeed.
And then I mean, they're not super rigid. They're kind of like they are sort of the time, of the kind of era. They're not exceptionally rigid in terms of like their super rigid ideologies. Like there's a lot of wiggle room for a lot of various different aspects of it.
Yep.
But they're kind of like, if you can think of, the mindsets of the eras, like it's three mindsets and three kind of sort of almost beliefs, like belief and sort of like how would you call it, like ideologies of the era. So it's not like oh, you're gonna be Roman, or like oh, you're gonna be Greek, or oh, you're gonna be the Gauls or something like that. Like it's not that rigid set.
Yeah. So the other important thing here is that your company joins a faction. So you as an individual pledge to a faction, and then you can build up a company within that faction. So you're effectively trying to build a company that represents your faction and can be successful. In order, and of course, the end game purpose of these companies is territory ownership. In order to retain control of a territory, you must actively reinforce it. If you already own it, you've got to actively defend it. It's not just you own it permanently. There's none of that. Like, it's a very fluid system. There's a good chance that you could lose territory, even if you've owned it for a very long time. Even if it's fully upgraded, which we'll get to in a later bit here. So, there's everything from PvE missions and PvP missions that you'll accept from your factions, and those missions will give you rewards, and some of those rewards will be faction specific. So when they talk about purchase faction specific equipment and items, so that's a pretty important distinguishing detail there. So that means that there's potentially stuff that only your group can wear. So that's
and only your group can potentially wield as well. Like
yeah,
you see this in many other games as well. Like they're kind of like making a decision as to which kind of group or which kind of like which faction you're going to be in. Probably one of the most stark variants on that is, or the stark examples of that is in PlanetSide 2, where you get to basically choose one of three factions, and they all have different weapons, and those weapons all have like different like kind of characteristics in terms of how they play, how they feel. So although we haven't seen any actual solid information brought out by Amazon Games at the moment as to the differing aspects of the faction specific stuff that you can get, I imagine that there will probably be something along those lines.
Yeah. It might also be like a bind on pickup type deal, to prevent me just going out and saying, oh well, I grinded up enough of this so that I can just trade it to somebody in another faction. That might be a thing, might not. We don't know where they've landed on that. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch for. As of course there is also the player run markets, so that'll be an important factor if you can actually get everything or not.
Because some things might be marketable, some things might not be. Like there is that kind of thing in other games as well.
Yep. Just like playing EVE Online, it's some things are worth a great amount of money. Some things are completely worthless. So, moving on from there, it's also about war. So companies give you the opportunity to declare war and take the territories. Um, they have an interesting setup when it comes to war. Um, you can pick all 50 people when it comes to defending for PvP your territory. So if you want to pick all of your guys, let's say you got 50 people, you take all 50 people, bring them in, and there you go. There's your defending force. Now, aside from that, you can also call on other people in your faction or other people in the third party faction. Because there's 3 factions. So you got an attacking side, a defending side. If the defenders want, there's that third faction out there that they could potentially recruit in people and be like, hey, for this, you want to fight with us against them.
Yeah.
Friend of my, or enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
And of course, let's say you're a quality governor, and you've got a nice tax rate, and the locals are a little bit afraid of the new guys coming in and jacking up the tax rate and just making things miserable. There's also the devil you know versus the devil you don't, where you might have a lot of people that come to your aid, or alternatively,
you might think those taxes are oppressive now.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know. Maybe the people who you communicate with to bring in to install new ownership, new governorship, may end up actually jacking up the taxes even further. You never know.
Exactly. So it's an important distinction there. And it also, I think, when it comes to territory ownership, it comes down to just not being a dick. Because if you're a dick to the people that live in your city or in your settlement, they're probably not going to come to your help.
Yeah.
And not every time are you going to be able to field all of your people. You might have to take in some random people to help defend.
And you may think, as say a group of 40 or 50 people, for example, 40, 50 kind of gamers in a clan kind of thing, that you may have, defense locked down, as it were. But yeah, you may have defense locked down for a week, maybe a week and a half. But as is all things, especially when it comes to medieval fighting, sieges are sieges. Sometimes they last more than a week. And it's all about, it may end up being all about the long term. So you may end up having to be in a situation where you want to have people, who are maybe part of your faction but not part of your company, to fight alongside when members of your company can't make this particular defense or that particular defense because they have things in real life, or or they're just exhausted from constantly doing it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, if you own a very profitable, let's say a town becomes the center of trade for a huge area of the map, for instance Jita in EVE Online, it might become a place that is highly sought after because of its value and the amount of money that it could potentially gain, which then becomes, okay, how is that money used, and how does the governor ensure that the people are happy. Otherwise they might rise up and continually grind down and make your life miserable.
Because I can tell you what, the populace of the potential populace of a town in New World is going to eclipse any size of company.
Yep. So we're going to move on from factions and companies, and we're going to talk about a letter from Scott Lane to the community.
Yes.
That is also posted on their website. It's a great opportunity for them to kind of reach out, talk about what's going on, talk about some of the bugs that they've identified. We've clearly there's been some craziness that's happened during the alpha, and there are people that are actively trying to test and identify stuff, so that the game, when it releases, has less bugs. That's the whole, like, for anybody out there who's trying to, like, just go crazy and be like, oh my god, I want to play the game early, like, it's going to be the best thing ever. Remember that alphas are for finding bugs. You want to find what's broken so that they can fix it before it releases, so that you don't have a broken game on release. So
Yeah,
a lot of the
like
focus at this point is on bug management and fixing these things.
and a lot of people seem to, especially especially this day and age, a lot of people tend to see alpha stage kind of access as being some kind of privilege, being able to play the game before everyone else. Well, it's a lot more different than that. Like it's a different thing entirely. Like a lot of what you do as like in an alpha is not playing the game in a sense of for enjoyment. It's a test of destruction, right? You're literally trying to find ways of breaking the game, because a lot of game companies back in the day, they would hire out alpha testers to try and test their games out and stuff like that, and it worked to a degree fairly well. But the sheer work capacity of a playing audience just completely desolates any capacity for professional testers, as you would say, professional alpha testers. So that's why nowadays you see a lot of games companies outsourcing their alpha testing and bug hunting, essentially, to sort of like a small subsection of the player base, because even that small subsection is vastly more capable to find bugs and to approach the game in a different way and with a different mindset, in order to find potential bugs that could be exploits when the game is live. So that's the reason why people tend to the why and the how in terms of alpha testing, in modern alpha testing anyway.
A good example of this is, if anybody has heard of the Ultima Online ecosystem problem. There was an action that they didn't anticipate the players to do that involved the ecosystem of how they could get the predators and the prey to work off of each other, and they assumed that because players would get XP and items off of killing the predators, they would just leave the prey alone. When instead, when the game launched, they had tested it with 20, 30 people. And they launched the game, and all of a sudden, everyone's out there killing everything. And because of the way the ecosystem worked, you had to have prey in an area for predators to spawn. But when nothing was there... And
so the system just broke.
Yeah. So within a day, the entire map was just blank. There was no animals anywhere. And it was, well, what do we do now? And they had to very quickly, patch it and go, okay, this is not how this is supposed to work. So they just started, hopefully this will work. And, it took multiple iterations to kind of find the right thing.
It's like, why are you not playing the game the way I wanted you to play it?
Yeah, they built this just beautiful system of ecology, but at the same time, it failed because the players did something that they didn't anticipate them to do. Like, and testing at the size that Amazon is testing at, there is a lot of opportunity to catch stuff, and you're gonna get everybody from the people that are I want to try this out, see if it's a game for me, and then you're gonna get the people that are, I'm gonna try and break this, and I'm gonna try and break this at every possible turn, because this is also what I'm gonna do after it launches. And I don't want somebody else to figure this stuff out before me, let alone I don't want them to figure it out and use it against me. So, identifying things like an infinite coin glitch, and all of the other like just crazy bugs that you could find in the game are really important to find those in the alpha so that they aren't in the finished game.
Exactly.
It's just vital. So it's really nice that they actually
And
were giving kudos to specific players for finding those issues.
yeah. And they're issues like you may think that these are issues that if they occurred at the start of the game, then they may be able to rectify them. But this isn't a case of trying to rectify something at the start of the development of the history of New World.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of aspects of this that you have to get right at the start in order to maintain constantly building this world and constantly keeping a live game live without having to revert it, because that's one thing that Amazon Games has, I believe they've stated, right, that they want this to be continually, like they're not going to be wiping the game constantly. They want it to be a continual existence.
Yeah, I believe they're aiming for just a constant, no need to wipe. I think there's in the leaks from the early, like the original alpha, people had mentioned that they had wiped servers, every once in a while. I don't believe that to be their aim anymore. I think they're aiming for a persistent universe, which I think is a much more sustainable system. Because
Sure.
you get a lot of issues when you add in wipes.
The other thing is wipes are easy, but they develop a kind of a community, almost like a communal condition that essentially it means that if I lose, then all I have to do is sit back, not play the game, and wait till the wipe, and then I can come back, right? Whereas when you actually have a situation where you actually have cause and effect, and you have consequences there, then things start to mean something to players, which is very important in this day and age.
Yeah, it doesn't give you the easy out of just waiting, and you also want people to be playing the game more often. You don't want them to just be like, I can take 3 weeks off and wait for the next wipe, and everything be good.
And that's what happens with a lot of sort of siege-based games that a lot of people kind of tend to look at New World as being one of those siege-based sort of like your siege-based MMO kind of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the communities there are basically on this roller coaster ride of first week kind of surge, and then it just peters off until the next wipe. It's just this constantly repeating kind of sort of cycle.
Yeah. So I think some of the other things here is that they kind of rededicate themselves to the PvE and PvE balance, intending and complementing each other, giving people an opportunity to grow without just getting dumpstered, but also ensuring that PvP is a viable option in the game. Now, for some of the people that are out there, some people are going to be like, well, they've got a clear agenda. That said, I don't necessarily disagree with these changes. I think that the change from an open world PvP all of the time to an opt-in is a good system. and I think that it's a good balance of what they wanted to get away from versus what they kind of made their way into.
The thing is, there's a degree of when you have complete complete lack of restriction in terms of game, applying the mechanics of the game, especially when it comes to combat and stuff. You will have those situations where there's safety in numbers and there's also power in numbers, and that might be all fair and well, but when you have a situation where a game, as well as a player base, doesn't have the capacity to kind of grow with the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have situations where, the act of, well organized players is almost to the detriment of the game. A lot of people tend to use EVE Online as an example of, oh well, EVE Online's been going on for for decades, like it's almost coming up to its second decade, and they're completely fine. They still have they still allow like unrestricted numbers of people to come together, etc., etc. But what a lot of people don't realize is back when EVE started, the player numbers and the amount of people who came together to fight each other was like minuscule in comparison.
Oh yeah. Well,
and
it takes a long time for people to build those colossal organizations.
Yeah, but it also gives developers time to look at the progression of their players, not just in the game as progressing their characters in game, but more how they're interacting with each other, and whether that interaction is positive. Well, not positive as in oh, I'm really liking this game, but positive in terms of is this attracting more players? Is this bringing more people into the game rather than, scaring more people away?
Mm-hmm. And I definitely think that they obviously went towards the route that's going to make more people happy, be more inclusive, be less brutal.
But what I'm trying to say is it's a much better starting point.
Yeah.
For a game.
Yes.
Because if you start at brutal hardcore, then you're only going to get brutal hardcore people, and they're much thinner crowd.
Yep. And it's gonna be a lot easier to attract other people by spinning the dials up a little over time, versus spinning them down and having the reputation of, oh hey, this is just for super hardcore people. Like,
the dial goes up to 11, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It doesn't go from 11 to nothing. It goes from 1 to 11.
Yeah.
Just to use a
it's much easier to start at 5 and go, okay, I've got some playroom in both directions, than it is to start at 11 and be like, I can only go down from here, because so I think that's an important distinction there. I'm gonna keep us moving along here, and we're gonna talk about a video that came out, and we're gonna link the video. It's the Call to Arms video, which is kind of a deep dive into the combat of the game, the combat systems and stuff like that. It's a lot more dynamic. It's a lot more, it's of course real time. It's not tab targeting. It's aimed at being a pretty fluid system where you're actually in control of your character for everything.
Yeah.
And of course, it's just pretty.
Oh, of course. And one of the things is, I'm really glad that they didn't go to tab targeting.
Yes.
Because the reason why is because a lot of what makes a lot of it, skilled mastery of gameplay should allow a player to fight outnumbered. And in tab targeting, that there isn't really that possible unless you very seriously create huge power curves for various different things for items and equipment that you allow your players to sort of utilize.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
So,
to me, that's not really skill. That's
yes.
what that is just, you've spent more time in the game, so you've got, your character has more attributes or more skill. That's not actual player skill.
Yeah.
The
Now,
reason
that said, the more you play with a weapon, the better you are with that weapon. So,
yeah,
it's not necessarily just on a damage side of things, but like you'll unlock different abilities and stuff like that. So like there's a bunch, and then just pop the mastery section of the video on here.
yeah.
You kind of become molded into your own character based on your interests. But at the same time, somebody else can still dumpster you because they've chosen a different path, and or they're just playing better than you. Like if you're let's say you're playing ranged, you've got a bow, and I've got a bow, but I can land headshots every single time because I'm real good with that bow. I'm gonna kill you every time.
Yeah.
Regardless of if you've got all the fancy skills and abilities, because
especially if you I mean the thing is with skills and abilities is like once a person knows like the capacity of those skills and abilities, even if they don't use them themselves, due to whichever some degree of limitation in the game, right? Just the knowledge of what those potential abilities can do can allow not only your skill at dodging those sorts of things, but even feigning those to occur to basically for your attacker to potentially utilize without realizing that there is inherent risk or danger with using those particular skills or those particular abilities.
Yeah. So the other thing to note is that as you use abilities, they go into a cooldown. So like you can't just spam your abilities. You have to actually be good with the regular combat as well. You might be like if you spam all of your abilities on one guy, but you're in a group fight, now you don't have much of anything other than your regular attacks to take on everyone else for a while. Because it's not like it's not like a 5-second cooldown either. Like, you're gonna have to wait, which I like because it gives you that feeling of okay, I need to not ration, but I need to be selective about what I do and when I do it.
When and where. Yeah.
Which I really like.
There's a skill and a mastery when it comes to sort of playing racing games as to when and where to utilize your nitrous oxide, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the same mentality.
Yep.
Just with a broader kind of scope.
And of course, certain weapons are going to have an advantage over other weapons. You might be slightly faster swinging with an axe than you are with a sword, or you might be substantially slower swinging one of those warhammers, or it might be faster to reload a pistol than it is a rifle, but you get more damage out of the rifle. So is it worth which one's worth using?
And are you more agile with a pistol than you are with a rifle?
Exactly. And there's a lot of content out there that isn't necessarily already being seen. So like a lot of the screenshots and stuff like that are out there, you can see weapons and stuff like that look really cool, but might not be seen by might not be seen, might not even be tested yet. Like I know in the initial trailer, there's a 3-barreled pistol in the
Oh,
cinematic trailer, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, that's gonna be cool.
hell yeah.
But
I mean, it
you
not
know,
not not historically accurate, but I think I think the being able to play with the realms of sort of fantasy
hmm
here is perfectly acceptable.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
there's a
obviously,
lot of
when you
fun
look
that
at
they can have
what's
there.
yeah,
And of course, yeah, on the topic of fantasy, they've clearly taken some licenses here too. So there's some fun that can be had in that. Um, and of course, the game is very pretty at that. Um, so on top of that, you can see that there's obviously not just here's a sword, here's a bow, here's a warhammer, here's a hatchet. Like there are a lot of different types of different things that you saw in there. There's a pistol, what looks like cutlasses or rapiers. Um, you know, there's spears, there's swords, there's axes, there's throwing axes, there's all kinds of different stuff.
awesome.
And if you
Yeah,
take a look through all of the different concept art that's out there, which I have taken the painstaking time to do so, um, you start running into some interesting things. And I just put up an image that was
I,
released recently
yeah.
that has caused a little bit of a stir.
I mean, it kind of causes a bit of a stir because, like, as well, because kind of fairly recently there was obviously the real reveal of the soon to be coming new Assassin's Creed is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody's in this like, Vikings, yeah, kind of sort of feel, right? And then they release this image, and you're like, Vikings,
That
epic
is definitely the front end of a Viking ship.
for
So,
sure.
does that mean that we're going to see Vikings?
I
Like,
hope so.
I hope so too. We saw, so in the trailer, you've obviously got the Romans, you've got the conquistador types, you've got the
Yeah.
drowned sailors. Um, I think we've seen artwork for the pirates, um,
Yep.
and you've got the angry earth type that are kind of there to begin
Kind
with,
of.
and you've also got the
Yeah.
ancients. And very recently, this image was released, actually, I believe today or yesterday. And this looks to be a boss type character from the ancients. Um,
Damn. He looks
so
almost
that,
looks
yeah,
Egyptian.
yeah. Like I'm digging a lot of the stuff they're doing with the ancients and kind of taking in different cultures and stuff like that because they've got kind of like the Aztec temple in the background as well.
Yeah.
So like I'm liking what they're doing, and of course it's visually appealing. It's fun. It's something different. It's you know,
Yeah.
and we've seen a lot of other boss type characters since. Let me see if I can find a quick one here. Um, got a quick dig through my.
That's cool. That's cool. Like, one of the things about like some of the, especially the ancients, is because I was wondering how they're going to approach that particular. Well, it's not really a faction, but like an NPC type, right? Because they always kind of gave me a bit of a sort of Jason and the Argonauts kind of feel to them. But like, I kind of actually like the kind of direction that they're going with this kind of, Egyptian mythology sort of kind of feel.
So there's
Ah,
there's one for you. So
god damn.
you got another boss type character right there. You know, they clearly have put time and effort into designing very large, just you're gonna need multiple people to take them out type enemies. Another example here, Angry Earth type, that is substantially bigger than the player who's attacking it.
Jeez. Yeah, just a bit.
There are a ton of different instances where this happens. So when people say, "Oh, there's no that not going to be enough PVE content," I disagree. Like, I think that there's going to be more than enough to get what I find as a minimum. What I find as a minimum in an MMO in terms of content is at least 150 to 200 hours minimum of content.
Yeah, I think some people. I think some people kind of feel that maybe the repeatability or the replayability might kind of suffer a little bit after you kind of go through, one or two kind of instances of doing, fighting in the same area. As to how New World might sort of tackle that, like we don't quite know. There might be multiple.
I'd like to note that Warframe is a game that has existed for a long time and is very heavily based on playing the same maps over and over and over and over again. Given they've randomized how the maps lay out, but effectively it's the same missions over and over and over again. So,
But you never know. Like there might be multiple kind of sort of multiple triggers that trigger enemies in different ways, in different means. There might be randomized triggers or randomized event triggers that occur, like when you're kind of progressing through, say, various different areas of the map that determine as to the actions or like sort of, for example, like how enemies react, how enemies maybe respawn, for example, to change how this time around, like the play through this time around may differ from previous times. So there's elements for sure that Amazon games can utilize that can make replayability differ constantly.
Mm-hmm. And of course, setting up an objective, setting up a. I want to talk about raids for a second. Like, so they've said there's no instance raids. They have since announced arenas, where you go in, you try and kill a super powerful thing with a group of people. You have to grind for keys and then get in, and it's got a potential of dropping like super powerful gear. Great. That said, in an open world setting, there are ways of developing a raid-like system without actually making it instanced. So let's say
for sure.
I, as an individual, and my company decide we're going to go up the mountain pass that you can only go up kind of one way. You might be able to go off the back of it, down into another area, but there's only one way up there. It's a narrow path that goes up, and you got to fight enemies the whole way up. And at the end of this long, narrow path, there's a treasure, that's worth the beating that you're going to receive from these massive bosses and from these NPCs that are going to swarm you the whole time that you're going up towards it. That's how you can kind of do that. And of course, NPCs respawn, so finding your way out is going to be just as hard as finding your way in.
I was going to say, with enemies, with NPCs respawning or resurrecting in some way, shape, or form, like the capacity for, say, something like that, like a raid like that, for you to get to the great loot, may be great, but like you have to get out with that loot as well. And if in the situation, Amazon Games decides to, maybe not hard code, but basically put in situations where, there is almost no chance of you not losing a team member at this particular point, then, you end up in a situation where, like, you're constantly hemorrhaging members as you're going up to this place. And then finally getting there and realizing you have to go back all the way through there.
Yeah. And then of course, you might need to make the decision of, okay, who isn't going to make it? As a healer, You know, if they add in healing magic or stuff like that, are they gonna am I gonna get the choice of okay, hey, do I save the captain or the governor of our company to um, to make sure that we've still got somebody calling the shots here, or do I save the guy who's acting as tank? You know, you might need to make some uncomfortable choices. Um, so and because the NPCs respawn, you also have to keep moving. Otherwise, you might trigger more than you hoped for.
I was just kind of thinking that in that regard, like, sort of a metaphor for that. Like, are you going to forsake, are you going to stay true to your bonds of friendship, going up that mountain, making sure that, you make sure that you get Frodo up to the top of that mountain, right?
Or
Or are
do
you
you
going to
shank him and
forsake
take the
them,
ring?
or as you as Boromir are going to shank him and take the ring and go up there yourself?
Yeah,
Yeah, you never know.
it's an option. And of course, there's going to be a difference if you're flagged for PvP. Let's say your group is flagged for PvP. You could potentially run into another group who also wants to run that content, who catches up to you, and now you're going against the players and the PvE content.
Mm.
So, there is some opportunity there as well for making things even more difficult, or being those guys and
And
making it more difficult for someone else.
yeah, and in that kind of sense, the replayability kicks up a notch as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because not only is it just different, it's suddenly, maybe even orders of magnitude harder.
Exactly. So there's a lot of really cool stuff there, um, and of course there's an infinite amount of stuff that we could talk about. I do want to hit on the fact that Amazon Games did just release, in conjunction with another studio, Crucible, which is a
Ah,
free-to-play shooter, um, with kind of an interesting kind of build up over time. You got to make a lot of different choices, um, in order for you to get where you are. It's had mixed responses. A lot of the early feedback was that it wasn't available at the time that they said it was going to be available. So there's that.
well,
Um,
that's always going to piss a few people off.
and right now on Steam, it's currently a mixed response with about a 43% upvote. Um, I played a few rounds. I think it's interesting. I didn't have a ton of time to get like super into it, because I had bigger plans for my first time off in a long time. So like I took took an opportunity,
Yeah.
played three matches. I thought it was fun. I thought the time to kill was a little on the long side, but at the same time, I think that there's a much deeper meta than I was experiencing. And I think that playing it with a group would have been a lot more fun than playing it by myself. So, um, it could be worth trying. And as Amazon's first kind of bigger budget game to be released, I think it's an interesting showing.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to take a look at that. In actual fact, I didn't realize it had already been released.
Hmm. And it's free to play. So
Yeah.
there's that. So putting this out there. So Amazon releases as their first big budget game, a free to play game. 2, they've got New World coming up soon, which we haven't hit on yet. Which, yes, they have had a change in the release date. So surprise,
Yeah.
surprise, there is a reason that I wanted to push for, yesterday or today about getting the stream out there. Today
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be the day that it came out.
Yeah.
So, highly unfortunate. But anyways, they have shifted the release date back. Going to be able to play the beta in July. They haven't committed to a date in July, so it would probably be somewhere between July 1st and July, whenever July ends. Um,
how astute of you,
you know,
Ace.
that moment when you're like, is it it's I know it's not the 28 one. Is it a 30 or 31? Um,
Oh, God's
anyways,
sake,
they got
man.
31 days to hit that target of when to start the beta. I personally think that if you're in the situation where you're going to take an opportunity to delay because you've got stuff that, because of obviously because of how this worked, like how COVID-19 hit everything, how it changed everything. Being somebody who manages a large group of people, I can tell you it does not affect all groups equally, and it does not affect who you would think it would in ways that you would think it would. So
Yeah.
I've had people that work for me that are dramatically slower working from home because they've got kids at home, they've got dogs at home, they've got different things that they would like to bake at home, they've got their laundry to do, that they've got all these
All
things that
sorts of
might take more
distractions.
time and distract them from doing their work. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you've got people who excel that,
At a home
working,
environment. Yeah.
working from home like me. Like I've got a roommate and a dog, but I've got a nice comfortable office. It can be quiet. It can be, I can get a lot of work done very quickly here. Now, when you do a delay of, when delay of launch, you want to make sure that when you hit that, you hit it and you go all the way to, we want to make sure we hit our mark and sure we release this with everything fixed without any kind of issue with all the content we could possibly add in there. And two, you give yourself a little bit of an extra cushion. And here's why. You start looking at what's the next part of the release. So Amazon announced that they've got a 10-year plan for supporting New World and developing content and all of that. It is the game as it releases is not going to be the same game in 10 years time unless everybody stops
Oh yeah.
playing it. Like
Eve is vastly different, like night and day difference between when it started and 10 years after it felt like, after it's been going.
Now, that said, I fully think that this could overtake WoW. But do I think that it's going to have the same amount of content that WoW has now? God, no.
No.
WoW's got, what, 22 years worth of development time into it? Of course it's not going to have the same amount, Like, that would be insanity if they released a game with that volume of content. Like,
it's like find me the development studio that can can develop 22 years worth of development, or worth of content development that also includes like literal millions of players of feedback alongside it, like in the span of a couple of years, under a strict NDA restriction. Like this is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
yeah, it's just not going to happen, and that's just how it is. Like, now, do I think that what they have is going to be fun? God, yeah. Am I happy? Am I happy with the fact that I still have the game pre-ordered? God, yeah. I've got the deluxe edition. I'm thrilled. Between the first alpha and this alpha, I can't even. I don't even know that I can measure the volume of time.
I kind of half feel like you bought the deluxe edition specifically so you had your Mastiff at home. So you're like, oh, I've got a dog in game and at home.
I did kind of want the dog. So, and they've made announcements about different kind of animals that you might be able to pick up and stuff like that. So like there's some. I think there's a lot of stuff that they are. I think that they're keeping. I think that they're keeping stuff hidden. I'm going to say
sure.
that. I think that they're keeping stuff hidden until the last possible minute, and I don't even think they're going to show it in the beta. I think they're going to make it into the beta. They're going to go, hey, try this out. Let's stress test all these systems. It'll be great. And then on launch, they're going to be like, boom. Here's a whole bunch of stuff you guys have never seen before.
You didn't see all of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, I think that's what's going to happen.
Because you can test, sort of game systems, game mechanics using various different things, right? You don't have to show, you don't have to show everybody like all your cards, right? In that situation, like so long as the people who are, in the alpha or in the beta, are testing the things, that the content can be situated in, then yeah, you can hold back content. You can hold back kind of, some really fancy stuff.
Mm-hmm. As long as you're pretty confident in how it's going to turn out, you can kind of do whatever you want. Like, and I feel like that's what they're going to pull here.
I did want to roll back a little bit just to the COVID-19 kind of thing, because I think there's one aspect of like the rollout and the update in terms of when the beta and when the full game was going to be released, that kind of sometimes people kind of get the wrong idea. And I know that you have, well, you said you spoke to how how the kind of lockdown has affected people and how it affects people differently, right? A lot of people would kind of said, oh, they didn't announce this change to the release date for a little while, and a lot of people kind of can draw conclusions as to, oh, they just, they were dragging their heels, and that they just want more time in order to polish it and stuff like that, and it's got nothing to do with COVID-19. But the thing is, when it comes to transitioning your company from an office environment to like a hybrid office / work environment situation, with a lot of people having different circumstances and those circumstances affecting how much work they can get done, there's a lot of situations where the pipeline of where certain things get held up, and whether other aspects of the game are surging through, right? You have to, as a manager in that situation, take account and take stock as to what aspects of the development process pipeline needs to get shored up by other people, by basically moving some people around and making sure that like the work needed, or the volume of work needed, is going to be able to go through without lagging behind and causing disruptions in how fast you can develop a particular game, develop aspects of the game or the game as a whole. And so that all takes time, because you have to understand how fast people are going through the work that they need to get through. And only then, once you've been able to properly assess how fast they can get through and what needs, and the shuffling around of people in order to actually, get that work done in a meaningful time period, only then can you really assess, like, how far away are we to releasing? And only then can you look at how far away you are to releasing, and when you previously said when you were releasing, and kind of go, okay, we need to adjust people's expectations. So that's, if you can understand that, and I'm fairly certain that people, if you take a minute to actually understand that situation, you can properly understand as to why it took Amazon Games a little while to figure out when they felt like they could potentially release.
Yeah. Now, I also want to say that a lot of people assume that we're talking about like 10 people. If you're managing 10 people, it's a whole different story. Like, if this whole thing was 10 people, that would be a whole different thing. 2 years ago, this was the New World team. That's the better part of 100 staff. So
yeah, that's the New World team. That's not all of Amazon Games. That's just the New World team.
Yeah. That's a large group of people that each of them has specific roles. Um, you know, let's say your artist might be able to work substantially faster, but your IT guys that need to be working directly with the server have new restrictions where hey we can only have fewer people in the office, so somebody's got to telework and work on code, but somebody else is going to be implementing the code in the office. It might slow things down. You know, your game developer type people, your guys who are concept, how do we want these systems to interplay with these other systems? Generally speaking, they would spend a lot of time in meetings together. So
Yeah.
now you're removing them from an environment that they're used to, where they're used to, hey, we've got a scheduled meeting for this with a whiteboard. We'll discuss this. We'll talk about this. The subtle head nod that somebody might give during a meeting might be missed in a virtual conference, or an over-the-phone conference. Your conference lines might not have the availability to have everyone in the conference at one time.
You might end up you might be constantly having people like jump into the conferencing software that you're using, throwing up pornography into the scenario.
It could happen, yeah.
Not like that actually happened. Zoom.
Yeah.
But just a myriad of like crazy things that could potentially cause issues with developing a game. Like, and we haven't even hit the most obvious one, of the lot in the recent sort of period of time is someone critical or semi critical on work on particular workflow or pipeline, actually getting COVID and having to actually go to hospital.
Yeah, and they you could lose somebody. You could lose somebody for you'd lose them permanently,
2, 3, 4
but
weeks.
You could lose them for a month,
yeah.
Of recovery, and that's a rough thing to do. Like, that's a rough thing to have happen. Not to mention the morale issues with the rest of the team, of the worry of, okay, hey, I was in the office with them. Like, given Amazon did the telework early compared to everyone else, there's still that risk of, hey, I was in the office with them last week. Like, do I have it?
Yeah.
So like that might affect how people work as well. So like, basically, what we're getting at is they picked a new date. They picked a new date for a reason. It's a large team. It's a large, complex process. Hopefully, they gave themselves enough time to make sure that they can complete everything that they need to complete and give the best version of the game for launch. Unfortunately, that means people can't play when they thought they were going to be able to play, and we're not at the release state right now, but soon. We're getting there. We're very close.
Yep. Just take stock of the situation at hand, and just be understanding that these guys and these girls, like, they're all human, right? They're people.
Yep. And they're good people too. Like, I've gotten to chat with a few of them over the last couple of years now, and they're good people to work with. They're very easy to talk to. I would not categorize myself as a very successful streamer. But that said, they're still willing to chat with me. I think it's just because I'm a friendly dude, but I think it's just because they're nice people too.
And some of them really love their spears.
They do love their spears. I love their spears. Look at that orichalcum spear at the bottom there.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
So pretty. For the people that haven't seen this stuff, this is the original concept art that they've released like years ago. It's good shit. Very good shit.
So where did we get on the letter to the community? I kind of lost track of that.
It's been a while.
We may have segued somewhat there.
Yeah, we took that rabbit hole for a while.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
So I think next up is war.
Should we just go
Right?
straight to war? All right, all
I think
right,
we're
yeah,
going
okay.
straight to war since we're looking at war hammers and war axes and you know maces and
Yeah,
stuff.
fuck it.
Let's take a look at how these things are going to be used.
Mm.
So basically, your end game is going to be taking territory, and of course, how you would do that is driving that territory into a conflict state, which is done through you know running those PvP missions for your faction in that territory, which will give you the opportunity to declare war. Now, once it's in a conflict state, a bunch of people, a bunch of groups might take the opportunity. Hey, we're all going to declare war. One of them gets chosen as the vanguard. They're the group that's in charge of the siege. Now, it's a 50v50 battle, so you take the vanguard is going to be able to identify in a PvP siege, identify all 50 players of the attacking side, and the governor of the defending side is going to be able to pick all 50 players of the defending side.
Yeah.
If you have 50 sign up. Now, it's not going to randomly pick other people if you just leave slots open. You have to pick them and have to have them join. So, if you're not trusted, you're not just going to randomly get in if nobody knows who you are. Now, that said, they might. They might bring you in because they're like, oh, hey, I've seen this guy running missions. I haven't talked to him, but, he's max level. He's a good dude. Let's bring him in. Maybe he'll help. Clearly he lives here, so, let's see if he's willing to help the cause. Maybe they do nothing. Maybe they help you. Maybe they hurt you. They feign like they're attacking, but in reality they continually miss or whatever. There's ways to mess with both sides in that instance. But it's a 50v50 battle, so it's going to be interesting.
But it's good that that is allowed to happen, because that also allows like a degree of meta play between groups as well.
Yes. Which I think, having a level of meta, having a level of unknown, uncertainty, you can't min-max 100%. Now, being able to pick all 50, you could potentially pick 50 people that you know. Hey, here's 50 people I know, I trust, I'm confident in their abilities. We're going to be good to go. This would be great. And all of them are max level. We made sure they had all the right gear, blah, blah, blah. In that instance, great, fantastic for you. I'm going to skip over to something else for a second, and we're going to talk about invasions. Invasions are a little different. Invasions are the PvE version of a war. Basically, the corrupted are deciding to, en masse, attack your fort. They're trying to make a stab at you to knock you down a peg. Now, you're able to take a number of your players in, not all of them. So your territory can choose 10 heroes to accompany them into the upcoming battle. The remaining 40 slots are randomly selected from players who signed up to take part in the invasion. Now, some people are like, my god, I can't min-max this. What are they thinking? This is truly awful. This is silly. I don't understand it. It's just that you don't necessarily understand it. So, here's the thought process. You take 50 people, 10 of which are going to be able to clearly be chosen. Have the rest of your guys sign up. You'll probably get a portion of them, if not all of them, depending on who signs up for the invasion. It's a high-level event, so it's level 50s and up only. So, you're not going to get a whole lot of alternate characters on, some second accounts or whatever, because we all know how difficult that can be to police. So
yeah, just saying it's never going to happen doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Saying it's never going to happen isn't a reality, but it could, but not very likely. That said, by making it level 50, you got to put in a substantial amount of time to get to level 50. So, um, it's not like oh, I'm good. I'm just gonna make a whole bunch of characters and sign up with a whole bunch of newbies. Like, it's not how that works. So, part of this goes back to the job boards and completing completing territories. I'm looking. Sorry, I'm looking for a specific thing here.
Yeah, completing the various different sort of like town tasks, the town kind of projects, right?
Yep. So, when you complete projects for the town, eventually there is an end state of, hey, we've upgraded everything to its max level, we've upgraded all the fort's items and all of this, like, then what? So, being able to min-max this 100% means that there is no reason or there's no ability for that territory to get dropped down by a couple of upgrades. It adds a level of risk. It adds a level of subterfuge for people that are trying to come in and mess with you. It adds a level of unknown, uncertainty. You might lose a couple of tier 5 expansions to your settlement because, hey, we tried and we failed. But you might also win and be rewarded for winning and get to keep all of your fancy stuff. So it's it's a thing.
And whether whether the whether the task of being able to defend befits the cost or the work required in order to basically complete those projects is entirely down to how Amazon has kind of tweaked the numbers, tweaked the kind of dials, and all of these various different things. So it's one of those things where maybe some people might think like, oh, what's the point of having a tier 5 or tier 4 or all this kind of stuff, various different aspects of their settlement, if it's just getting knocked down constantly. Well, that's the thing. Like, rarely in games of this like complexity is everything exactly right at the start of it.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that kind of like getting it into the right area is down to obviously the alpha testers and after that obviously the closed beta, sorry, not open beta, the closed beta. But the ability to test these things out and see whether they're in the right ballpark is part and parcel of constant development of a live game.
Yes. So I found the slide I was looking for. So this is the perfect example here. Let's say you complete the upgrade to the gates, the upgrade to carpentry, the upgrade to the lifestyle perk for Chef's Passion, and the weekend invasions perk. Okay, great, phenomenal. You've maxed out everything in your territory. Now what? There's nothing on your board. You got to start new projects, but there's nothing to build. So you might start working on the next lifestyle perk, or you might start working on the weekend invasions, but you won't have as many options of things to do. So instead, this gives you the option of, hey, it's going to knock you down a couple of pegs, but it's going to give people stuff to do.
Exactly, and to some degree, people who are coming to these boards to do these various different things, they're not like, then in their mind they're not thinking, oh yeah, we need to upgrade the carpentry, etc., because that'll do this or that'll do that. Like a lot of the time, unless they progressed fairly far on the game so far, and they require certain things from the territory in order to craft or to do certain things. A lot of them are just looking at it kind of going, I need to make some money, right? And if you have these situations where the settlements just get maxed out, then half to 2/3, or at least half in that particular iteration, end up basically being removed from new players, or relatively new players, like sort of intermediate players, and removes at least half of their capacity to make some money, in order to do various different things in the game.
Exactly.
You don't want that. You don't want a situation to occur where half of almost a necessary aspect of gameplay gets removed. And having these invasions and having some of the randomized elements of these invasions keeps that churn.
Mm-hmm. Now, it also ensures that other players can get involved. Gives them at least the opportunity, hey, I got random drawed into this, let's see how it goes. Like, because there's going to be people that are like, hey, I want in on that content, but, I don't necessarily want to join this group, or, I don't want to, do this thing, maybe I just want to try it out.
And
I'm geared up for it, might as well,
And it's a potential gateway kind of scenario for them to experience like high level kind of group PvE, where they otherwise geographically wouldn't have experienced it. So in that kind of sense, it's almost like a gateway to them considering, oh, maybe I should talk to these guys, and maybe hook up with them, and go to this far-flung corner of the map to do some like crazy group and group PvE kind of thing.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the big things when it comes to MMOs, is that you want to create opportunities for people to be social. There's that's how you find groups. That's how you get out there and make a name for yourself. You might be the best healer that they've ever seen. But if you never have an opportunity to show them what you've got, they'll never know. Or you might be the best archer they've ever seen, or the best guy with a musket they've ever seen, but you can't do anything. You're never given that opportunity. So having it be random, I think, is actually a little bit important. Now, do I think that 10 is enough? Maybe not.
I don't. But that's the thing, I don't think anybody can say, oh yeah, 10's enough, because nobody really nobody, unless you're actually playing the game right now, nobody really knows whether a group of 10 high level players can fend off the attack from the NPCs, from the invasion.
Mm-hmm.
If they can, then maybe 10 is a little bit too much, because you need to make it a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if 10 well organized people can do it easy, then that means that it kind of you need to kind of mix it up a little bit and make it like make it a struggle, at least make the other the other people there be the tipping point, or have at least the random aspect of them being around and shooting at stuff be the random tipping point.
Exactly.
But that's the thing. Like these are all various different various different aspects of balance that need to be tweaked and will be tweaked. In the days, weeks, and months to come.
Yep. And of course, they're all pretty simple dials that they can just twist and see where is right. If 10's not enough, maybe they bounce it to 15, bounce it to 20. Hell, they could bounce it to 40. Like it's one of those things where they can make it more difficult. They can make it easier. it is what it is. Like, I think it's also one of those systems that I think is going to need to be seen on a live server with a large load of people.
It's nice how they've kind of like gone into the invasion and told you sort of some of the roles that the NPCs actually take. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Specifically the bombers, I find like that draws parallels to Lord of the Rings Two Towers.
Mm-hmm. Helm's Deep.
Yeah, exactly. Like, take him out. Like, and in that kind of sense, like, you kind of think like, what are the roles of archers, in this situation? There you are, right? Taking out those bombers that are running at the gates, for example.
Yeah. So I want to I do want to keep us moving because we've been on for quite a while here.
Yeah.
I want to mention two things before we kind of wrap things up. One, obviously the NDA is still in effect, so there's things that can't be talked about. There's things that are limited in what can be said. That said, those that are choosing to break the NDA, I'm not going to be one of them, because one, it's I don't think that it's a smart idea for anybody to want to take on $1 billion company that has more lawyers than I have dollars. So, again, personal choice, whatever. That said, those that are choosing to break the NDA, I don't know that I would put a lot of emphasis on what they have to say, because no one is able to come out and defend the other side. So
yeah,
there's an important part of that. So it's
anybody who's invested, or not even invested, or anybody who is is able to essentially counter what people who are breaking the NDA are saying. The people who are would literally be there kind of going, no, you're full of shit because of X, Y, and Z. In doing just that, they effectively break the NDA, and because of that, force Amazon to remove them from being able to play the game that they want to play eventually. So it's like a self-defeating kind of situation, and because of that, you may look in and around the various different communities and various different forums and various different Discord channels and stuff like that, Discord servers and stuff, and see people breaking NDAs, saying various different things, and not really getting much kind of like pushback from that, which inherently makes people kind of think, oh, maybe they might be right. There's not really that many people defending them. Maybe they're right about this. Well, when you can't come to the defense because the thing that you want to enjoy will be taken from you because of that, it's hard to go and defend it.
Exactly.
I mean, I would like Amazon to, potentially look at ways of being able to do that, but the thing is, with members of the community and with gamers being gamers, they will game how Amazon can potentially do that as a way of leveraging their ability, as a way of essentially breaking the NDA without breaking the NDA. For nefarious purposes, that is.
Exactly. So it is important to note that you're only getting one side. Think critically. This is just like reading news off of a normal news site. Think critically, get both sides, see if you can understand what's actually happening, amongst all of the political type stuff. Like, it's important to understand what's actually happening and not just, oh, hey, this person told me to think this, so I should think this. You know,
and
that's not how it
and
works.
even if you can't get both sides, specifically because of the NDA, take what was said and run it through your head rationally.
Mm-hmm.
And have you and consider the fact that this game is still in a degree of flux to some degree. Balance changes happening here, there, everywhere. Things being tweaked, things being changed, things being maneuvered around, right? These aspects that people seem to be wanting or seem to be compelled to break the NDA for are minuscule. Like they could be here, there, and gone the next.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who have decided upon themselves to break the NDA may literally have just talked about absolutely nothing. Broken the NDA for no reason whatsoever. But they went and did it because they were impulsive and irrational in their sort of perception of where the game may be, or irrational and prone to passionate outbursts because of I mean, a myriad of reasons, really.
Temporary lapse in sanity. Um, and
Which
it
could
just
be
is what it
understandable.
is.
Yeah.
Just think about things rationally. Think about them as they might actually be, and don't take everything at its face value, because it's important to know. Now, that said, don't take me and McLeod at face value. Yeah, we try and do as much analysis as we can, but there are other opinions out there. I'm sure there are people I know there are people that are not happy with the direction of the game, and I know there's people that are still not happy about the direction of PvP. Like, there are people who will be salty for the rest of eternity over the change in PvP. Oh well, move on. Like, they might return to a system closer to that eventually, but they've already said in like how many different dev blogs that they're not going back to pure open world PvP all the time. Like, but at a certain point when the developer studio gives you so many different opportunities to be like, okay, hey, move on if this is your thing. Eventually, you got to catch the hint. So the other thing that I want to talk about before we wrap things up, for the official show, we'll do a little bit of a Q&A with the viewers here afterwards. I do want to talk about Reddit. So those that don't know, I am also one of the moderators on r-New World Game. So we try and keep things fun, keep it New World. We limit self-promotion, try not to name and shame people, and try and keep the toxicity in check, which, depending on the day, can be a challenge. Looking through my board right now.
I don't get to see behind the curtain that A's does, but he's described it as not a hellscape as such, I guess, but there's a lot more like that needs to be done, and that does get done. Then
and we've got a really good team of people working this too. So I want to give a shout out to Freister, Anarchy Now, both great guys. They're among the and Nong Chol as well. All three of them great guys. It's a good mod team to work with. We've all got a very similar idea of the direction we want to bring things. None of us have the same view of the direction that we want the game to go, which we're not we have a very consistent moderation policy where if it's game related, if it's not toxic as hell, then we're gonna let it happen. But if you're gonna come in, you're gonna spam just toxic crap. Yeah, it's probably not gonna fly. But case by case basis.
Yeah.
The objective is keep it fun. Otherwise, what use to the community is it to have a subreddit if everyone's just throwing crap at each other?
Yeah. So if all you experience when you go to a subreddit for a game is just background noise, and you can't even tell what the hell is going on, then what use is it, right?
So, and part of this, so I want to dive into like how to build relationships with other people, and how to build relationships with developers. Like, I've done this with EVE Online. I've done this with New World. I got a few people that I chat with over there. And a number of other games. If you can go to them and get a following behind an idea and give them logical, reasoned arguments that are going to be able to turn their opinion of the direction of the game, that's how you gain ground. Throwing a hissy fit does the exact opposite. Because, believe it or not, like everyone else, when you see a shitstorm, especially one that you might have predicted because of a certain change, you might sit there and just be like, these aren't the people we wanted anyways. Versus, hey, they're making a logical point. I understand that, hey, if we change this, it would affect this other system. We might have missed that as an idea. That's an aspect of things. You got to treat them as people. Being outraged gets you nowhere. Being logical, being methodical, getting a following, getting a good idea, a well-rounded idea, is going to get you much more ground than, burning an effigy. Because,
yeah. Clutching pearls and being a Karen in this situation is not going to actually sway anybody. Like, you may think it might sway, like, people, and it may seem as though you're getting the upvotes, like, and it's doing something, but you have to sway the right people. Yeah. And those people aren't looking for a popularity contest. They're looking for reasoned and rational kind of arguments as to or not even arguments, like reasonable, rational explanations as to why something should be a different way or another way.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those reasons, this is another thing that some people don't get. Like, sometimes your reasons need to be fine-tuned. They need to be, they need a degree of kind of
polish.
Additional
processing, additional thought.
Like,
just as you think they might have missed something, the same applies to you. You might not have thought, hey, this other mechanic is involved in this other way. By changing this, it would fundamentally alter this other thing. Which would make it not work.
And a lot of what that requires is conversation with other people, because a lot of the times, people have set ways in how they view certain things, and that set way, is we're all slaves to that. We all have our own perspective on things, right? And it's the conversation, it's talking things over, discussing things with people, in a cool, calm, and collected way, to get your view of that situation, of that issue, of that problem, and a cool, calm, and collected, inclusion of their viewpoint of the situation, of the issue, that you can understand and grasp and incorporate it into your solution, your reasoned arguments as to why something should be a different way than how it is. That's how you make friends and influence people.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to end on a negative note, because this is naming it being negative. This is, it's a serious topic, but it's not negative. It's, it's building an understanding. So, and a lot of people give me crap for being positive. I'm apparently the defense.
You're hardly a yes man, Ace.
I'm hardly a yes man.
When you actually
have
talk
a number
to
of
you
ideas
about specific things, when you actually get down and actually talk to someone about very specific aspects of certain things, like you are hardly a yes man. Like there's communities out there that would not describe you as a yes man on other titles. Let's put it that way.
I have an idea and a direction that I would like things to go, and I've got a way that I sound that makes me sound like I'm always very optimistic. I'm optimistic about the game in the end. That said,
I was going to say, is it because of your upwards inflection at the end of your sentences?
Could be,
Do you by any chance have any Australian genes?
I don't actually.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised with the amount of upwards inflections.
Although I suppose I'm mostly British, so roundabout way probably.
we moved along all the terrible ones, and they ended up in Australia anyway. So
in that case, there's probably somebody down there.
they made good use of that area, so
Oh yeah.
All credit to them.
So, but the reality is, there will always be something to change, something to polish. Never in the history of gaming has there been a fully fleshed out everything on the release of a game. Now, that said, they've announced that they want to commit 10 years to this. So, if they're willing to commit 10 years to this, what's the game going to be like in 10 years? I think it's going to be interesting.
I just want to let you guys know, right? EVE Online, and everyone knows, if you don't realize that and don't realize this now, me and Ace have a bit of a storied history in terms of playing EVE Online, but probably one of the largest sort of games that MMO games that I've been a part of for the longest of time has been EVE Online, and I know, and I have been in conversations with the CEO of CCP as well. So I've kind of been able to confirm this and talk about this sort of subject with him before. But when Hilmar Vega Peterson, the CEO of CCP, created, or basically him and his team developed and created and released EVE Online, they only gave it a 4-year shelf life. 17 years later, it's still going.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are with Amazon Games. Yeah, and here we are with Amazon Games, and they're looking to, to support it for 10 years, for an entire decade. Mm-hmm. They're putting down for 10 years. So yeah, think about that. Yeah. And go and have a look. Go if you wanna, just just Google a review of EVE Online, back in 2003, 2004 when it came out. You will see reviews from credible reviewers and credible review sites dumpstering EVE Online, and it's still around now, strength to strength.
Mm-hmm.
So, just
that said, I don't play anymore, but
there's other reasons for that.
There's other reasons for that. But I'm also not the type of person who's going to stay around for a lost cause. And I lost a lot when it came to EVE Online due to decisions the developers made that to this day is a huge impact. So I made a decision to just leave it.
Yeah.
and I walked away with trillion isk, worth of yeah.
And eventually I'm going to um, bring A's around to just basically handing all of that to me. But that's another day
It's gonna.
and another
I'm
conversation.
going to rest on it like a pile of gold, like a dragon, as the ultimate in. You will eventually you will see the amount of money go idle in the system for the monthly reports, and it will be substantial. It'll be wonderful. Then again, I don't trust them with their data, but that's a whole different thing. But diving out of that rabbit hole, I have had a very positive relationship with the Amazon Game Studio. Great guys. So I'm hoping that hoping this goes well. Like I think it will. And I'm
Yep.
looking forward to the beta, which is going to be in July. I'm looking forward to the release, which is going to be August 25th. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be, you know, hopefully a good time for me. That said, I've got hurricane season coming up, so we'll see how that goes. Um, and
It's just like never rains, but it pours for you, isn't it, Ace?
it's it's a year. Earthquakes, pandemics, hurricanes,
You're there
tornadoes.
going. It's like, oh,
It's
God.
really a wondrous time to be in this field. So that said, we're gonna wrap up the official show, and we've got 5 viewers. If any of you guys have any questions, feel free to ask us.